Okay, so in this video, we're going to go ahead and create this CSS comment list. Basically, this is just going to be some markup with an image and a couple of pieces of text, and we're going to style this to make it look like a user with an image is posting a comment. And this can just be used, on the front end of however you're outputting comments on the back end. So this is what the list looks like. We've got one comment here that you can see has been made to look like it's almost like a reply. So you have the option of adding an additional class on if you want to make it look like a reply. But apart from that, all it is an image and two pieces of text. We're going to look at sort of floating and learn about how the floats, we come across problems with floats here and things like that, and just making sure that this works cross-browser. So this does work cross-browser. The only browser it's not going to be supported on is IE7. It's just going to look a little bit funny on IE7 and below, but we don't really mind. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the code for this. Okay, so we've started out with a basic document layout. We've just got a head, body, we're linking in the style sheet here, a title, things like that. So let's just take a look at the directory structure very quickly. We've got index.html, which we're working on at the moment. This is just for example purposes, but obviously if you have a website that you want to integrate this into, you would just write the markup wherever you needed this comment list to display. We've got a CSS folder, which just basically contains our global.css file, which we also have open. And we've got an image folder as well, which just contains an example avatar. Now in this case, you would probably dynamically pull avatars, locations from your database, and then hit your server to pull in the image. But in this case, we're just using this image as an example. Okay, so what we're going to do first is write the markup, and then we'll take a look at how we style the markup to look exactly how we want. So we'll write everything we need, and then we'll look at it without styling and see how that looks. So the first thing we need is a container to wrap all of our comments in, and this is just going to be a div with a class of comments. So within this, we're going to have many different comments and comment replies. So they're just going to be obviously divs, but we're going to have a class of comment. So in here is going to be the image, the text, and things like that. But we'll have multiple instances of these comments. So let's go ahead and just focus on one for now. So what do we need? Well, we need a few elements. The first one's the image, and that's just going to be a container with an image inside of it. So let's go ahead and do that now and preview it in the browser. So we create another div element, and this is going to be comment image. Now you've noticed I'm prefixing pretty much everything with comment. This just keeps everything modular and says to us, well, this style is associated with the comments on my site. So it just keeps everything, wrapped together. We'll be doing this for every element that we create within our comments sort of overall element, if you like. So within this comment image element, we're going to go ahead and just literally create a comment. And we'll give this a source and an alt, and I'm going to say Alex's avatar. And for the image source, we know that we've got an image within this img directory, so img/avatar.jpg. Okay, so looking at this in the browser then, it just looks like an image, so it's not very useful at the moment. We want to make this small and round, and at the moment it's very big and square. So let's focus on the actual body of the comment. We're going to wrap everything here in a container called comment body. And the reason we're going to do this is because we're going to float these elements. So we're going to float this one left and this one left, so they sit next to each other, as we saw in the preview at the start of the video. So the first thing is the little comment at the top saying Alex said 2 minutes ago, or someone said X minutes ago. And then underneath that, we want the paragraph where the comment sits. So for the class at the top, we'll call this comment info. And remember, I said I'm prefixing everything with comment, so that doesn't, this isn't an exception. So I'm going to say Alex said 2 minutes ago, and then a colon. So under here, we're not going to create another div, but we're going to keep things semantic and say that this is a paragraph of text. So let's take a look at what this looks like at the moment. Well, it just looks like an image as it did before with this text just underneath it. Pretty boring and straightforward, but it's good to see how the markup looks before we actually go ahead and style it. So we need to go ahead and just generate some text. So I've come over to Cupcake Ipsum. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this text. It can be any text you like, really. And let's go ahead and just paste that within that paragraph. So when I refresh now, you can see that we've just got text under here. So this all looks very boring. What we now need to do is go ahead and style this. So let's head over to our global.css style sheet, which remember is already linked in. We're going to go ahead and just change the overall font of the page first of all, because it's as default on my browser and operating system Times New Roman. So the body, we're just going to go ahead and set the font to, I don't know, 1M or something like that. And we'll go ahead and choose a more readable font. So Trebuchet MS, and we'll put the fullback as a sans serif. And let's refresh, and there we go. That already looks a little bit nicer. So now what we'll go ahead and do is look at styling the actual comments container. Now, we don't really need to apply this style, but I'm going to go ahead and use a class selector, select comments, and I'm going to go ahead and set the width to 100%. Now, the reason I've done this is just to remind us that the overall container, if we inspect this, is at 100%. It by default it's a block level element, so it will span the entire width of its parent container. In this case, the parent container is body. And basically the reason it's 100% is as I resize this, I want this to still look nice. So we're going to end up floating this text up here, with this obviously a lot smaller. But when I come in, I want everything to come in nicely. So basically, just to remind us that this is going to be responsive, I want the comments container to be a width of 100%. And of course, you could change this depending on your needs. It could be 70% or 50% or whatever. So let's go ahead and just give a little bit of padding to each of the comments. And so we're basically using just comment. And let's go ahead and set a padding here. So we've got north, east, south and west values. What we're going to do is we're going to set 10 pixels to each of these except the south. So the bottom is not going to have 10 pixels. Now the reason for this is, if we go ahead and refresh and just look at the padding here, the green that you can see around the outside of that represents the padding. Orange in Chrome represents the margins. But we've not put this on the bottom because if we think about it, at the top of each comment is 10 pixels. So as we duplicate these comments down, we're always then going to have a 10 pixel space between them. So if we just go ahead and duplicate this quickly to explain this, we go ahead and refresh, you can now see that between each comment is that green space there. So the green space at the top will nicely space out each of the comments. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that comment just for now. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is go ahead and look at floating these elements. In fact, we'll go ahead and look at reducing the size of this first before we do that. At the moment, this is looking a little bit too large, so we'll go ahead and focus on the element that represents the image. So we're going to go ahead and say comment image, and then we're going to target the image within that, and we'll go ahead and set this to a width of say 65 pixels. So now that we've done that, we can refresh and we can see it's starting to look a little bit more sensible. Now what we want to do though is, in fact, let's just reduce that to 50 pixels. We're going to go ahead and apply a border radius to this, and let's go ahead and take a look what the border radius property does if you're not familiar with it. If we set a border radius of 10 pixels, you can see this just rounds off the corners with a radius of 10 pixels. What we want to do is we want to match this with the width that we've given the element, in this case 50 pixels. And what that will do is it will round the borders off so much that it'll end up looking like a circle. So this property is supported in all of the popular browsers, i.e. I think 8 and below won't support it, so maybe 9, but you'll find that as a sort of fallback, this will just go square, which isn't a bad thing at all. So what we want to do now is actually go ahead and look at structuring this properly. So we want to float this text here, or this element, this comment body element, up to this, so it's sitting next to it basically. Now how do we do this? Well, let's go ahead and just set the comments background to a light grey, and this is going to let us see what happens when we start to float. So you can see that we've got this sort of full background here, everything looks fine. Now what happens when we go ahead and start to float elements? Well, let's go ahead and just add a selector for comment image up here, and we'll go ahead and float this left. So that actually, what we want to do, I suppose we can give this a width. So let's go ahead and give this a width of, I don't know, 65 pixels. So if we take a look at the comment image element, you can see that the blue area represents how wide this image is. And you can see, because it's a div element, which is a block level element, it spans the entire width of its parent container. But when we go ahead and refresh after that change, you can see that now we've got a smaller blue container. So our aim now is to go ahead and float both of these elements left so they sit next to each other. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and create a multiple selector. So we'll say comment image and comment body. And we'll go ahead and float both of these left. So it's just comma separating our selectors. So now what's going to happen? What's happened is nothing too interesting. It still looks bad, and it looks even worse now because it looks like the container has collapsed on us. So we'll go ahead and look at why this hasn't floated up here, and then we'll go ahead and look at why the container's collapsed. So the reason for this is the comment body is still at 100% width technically. So what we need to go and do is give this a width itself. So if we come down here and say comment body width of, I don't know, 80%. Now, you'll notice we're mixing percentages and pixels for this. And the reason for that is when we pull the page inwards, we want the image to remain the same size. So we don't want the image to change size. So when we refresh here, we can see it's already starting to look like what we saw at the start of the video. And it's still looking sort of bad though because of this container. Let's go ahead and just pull this in and I'll show you what I meant. As you come in here, you can see that this 80% element is sort of coming in, it's going along with it, and when we come in here it pulls down, but this is remaining the same size, and that's what we want here. You could of course have this image within it at a percentage level, but you know, you can play around with this and achieve the effect you need. But that's why we mix two different types, pixels and percentages. So now what we need to do is go ahead and address this container collapsing problem. The reason that this has happened is because we've got a container here, so we've got a comment here. If we go ahead and just duplicate this comment again, you'll see that we get more than one problem, and that is that we've got this now hanging around up here. So we're in a bit of a mess here, but if you take a look at each of the comments, you'll see that we've got two small green elements just up here. Now, when I float an element left inside of here and I float another element left, both elements are floated left, these two here, and this causes the container to collapse because we've not cleared the floats. So we're going to use a little bit of a hack on our comment to create a pseudo element, and this is an element that doesn't technically exist on your page, but we're using CSS to create this pseudo element. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and give this an empty contents, so we're just providing the content property and a space. We want to display this as a table. Yep, looks hacky. And then we want to clear both. Now clear can have clear left or clear right or clear both. So we're going to clear both, and what that will do is completely fix everything. And the reason this works is if we take a look within our comment element and this after, you can see that where the little yellow speech bubble is on the page, that's where that element is sitting. And what that means is it means that we don't have to create another element after each comment and specifically clear floats that way. We've done it in a sort of hacky but way where we don't need to provide lots of different lots more markup to our page, because things will start to get messy. So that's how we clear both of them. It's starting to look a little bit nicer. So now let's go ahead and just get rid of the background on that, and we'll now go ahead and focus on some of the other things. So we want to make this bold. We also want to reduce the padding or the margin between the two elements here. So let's go ahead and do that first. If we scroll down and scroll to comment body P, so we're targeting the P element or the paragraph element within the comment body, and we want to go ahead and set the margin on the top, because at the moment I think it's set to about 20 pixels. We want to go ahead and change this to 10. So when we refresh, that just pulls up a little bit, so it just packs everything a little bit more neatly into each other. So now what we want to do is go ahead and set the comment info, which is, remember, the element that contains the Alex said 2 minutes ago. And we want to go ahead and set the weight of this font to bold. There we are. So when we refresh, we now got bold text. You can do whatever you like with this. So that's all done. It looks nice in terms of how responsive it is. It pulls down here. You could probably hide these on mobile if you wanted, or something like that, or not load them in at all. But yeah, basically it's looking, as good as we can get it at the moment. So now let's go ahead and just quickly focus on the reply. So if I wanted this comment here, for example, to be a reply, I'm going to add a new class to this. So when I do that, nothing happens, but we'll go ahead and target this comment reply, and again with a comment hyphen prefix, we'll target this specifically to increase the margin on the left hand side. So let's go ahead and over here to our CSS, let's go ahead up to comment, and just below that we'll say comment reply, and we'll say margin left. Now, should we use a percentage or should we use a fixed width here? If we use a fixed width, so for example 50 pixels, on the desktop that looks good. We've just basically increased the margin on the left hand side. Nothing hard or clever about this. But when we go ahead and reduce down to a smaller viewport, you can see that this is sticking out almost too much, sort of unnecessarily. So we can remedy this by using a percentage. So if we go back over to our code, and instead of 50 pixels we use 5%, what this will do is it will reduce that inwards. However, when we come out, that'll increase nicely along with it, and then when we're in, say, a full view, it looks okay. So you can obviously play around with these values based on how you want your comment system to look. But basically what we've done here is we've built a front-end comment system with an image. We've looked at floating elements, tidying things up, and we've also looked at this comment reply hook or class that we can just pop onto any of the elements to increase the margin on the left. So that's how we create a comment list with CSS.